Okay, so let's talk a little bit about attributes. Now, I'm just going to walk you very briefly through how the setups for this is going to work. So, because I want to avoid having to tab between my text editor and my browser all the time, I prepared a little bit of a bigger document than it should have been normally. So, the structure is that I have the actual example, like the actual implementation first, and then I set a pre-tag, which is just going to tell the browser, don't strip out any white space or anything like that, just maintain the text structure that's inside. Then I have a code element, and then I have a visual representation of what you see up here. And if you're wondering about this LT and GT stuff here, that's basically something where I communicate to the browser that I want you to put, you see this LT here, I want you to put the character, the less than character there, and not try to parse it as an element. And the same things go for the GT, because if I actually put the less than and greater than signs in here, the browser is going to think that, oh, you want me to render this as a div element, and that's not what I want. Just want the text. Okay, so I go to my browser, and here we can see what we were looking at. So this top text here, this matches perfectly what's happening down here, and this is just a text representation of this stuff up here. Hope that's clear. Right, so an attribute is this stuff here. So you put attributes inside of your tag like this, and the two most common you're going to find is ID and class, and these are used primarily for CSS purposes. So ID is something that's going to be completely unique on the page. You only have an ID with one of these names. So there can never be two foo IDs on the same page. Just remember that. Class, this is the best one to use if you're doing styling. So you can have many like there can be 100 elements with the style class of bar on this page. So that's prefer classes if whenever possible. So we have some red text here, so we have a p tag, and here we have an inline style. So the style attribute allows me to uniquely style a single tag on the page, and here you see I set the color to red. Now this is not a good practice, this is just for demo purposes. Usually when you do styling and stuff like that, you either do it in the head of the document or you prefer a CSS file that you import, but we'll cover that later. And here we have an input element with some value, some text in it, and basically what we're doing, we're using the type attribute. So inputs have a type attribute that allows you to communicate what type of input it is. So this is just a text one, and value is what's going to be inside. Like you see that there's actually text here that I can select. That's what's going to be inside of this element. And then we have another type of input down here which has the type of number, and you can see that I can actually click here and change the number if I want to, and because it's a number input in essence. And then I use a placeholder. So a placeholder is just going to give me some placeholder text. I can't select this text at all. It's going to go away as soon as I put any type of input in this element. Right, and then we have an image. So it has a source attribute, and in there you just put a URL to the image that you want, and it's also going to have an alt attribute where you basically put the hover text or the screen reader text that this image is going to use, right? And finally we have a link. So it uses the href attribute, and that's just gonna be the URL to where this link is pointing. So this link is pointing to google.com, and then you put some text inside of it. So that's basically what attributes are. Now there are many more, like we can't cover all of the attributes that you can find in one video, but for the most part these are by far the most common attributes that you're gonna find. And if you're ever unsure like what an element has, what attributes there are and so forth, I highly recommend that you go to the W3 school. Like these people maintain a really good database of knowledge when it comes to HTML, CSS, JavaScript, like basically anything web. And you can use this as a reference guide to figure out, okay, what can I do with certain elements and so forth.